Hey everyone, welcome to another audio accountability video. This one is about album normalization versus single normalization on Spotify. A very important distinction. Great thing to know. As many of you are aware, I partnered with Isotope on a video concerning their new tool set within RX to optimize our masters for streaming loudness. This video had new information concerning the gate Spotify implements when calculating a song's loudness. This gate removes any audio under a certain threshold in the calculation of a song's integrated LUFS. This announcement was quite groundbreaking and answered a long unanswered mystery as to why some songs did not actually play back at the then purported -14 integrated LUFS standard. The very question that inspired audio accountability to form. I'd highly recommend taking a peek at that video first as a primer for this deeper normalization discussion. In this first video, I want to discuss the basic principles of album normalization versus single normalization. I know this is a relatively well-covered subject, even in the previous audio accountability videos, but I wanted to refresh here before jumping deeper. For this study exercise, I'll be using Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet LP. I chose this album for a few reasons. Number one, I did not master this project. Two, it is an extremely well-known example and undoubtedly one of the biggest albums of the year. Three, it is exceptionally well mastered. Number four, it is dynamically and stylistically diverse. Number five, it is also unique in this sense because it was mastered by two different mastering engineers. Please, 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 Sharpest Tool, Slim Pickens, Lie to Girls were mastered by Rory, and the rest, including Espresso and Taste by Nathan Dantzler at the Hit Lab. First, we are going to need to do some analysis. For a thorough understanding of a project's streaming loudness, a few things are needed. You need the original wave masters, or a wave version of the album. In this case, I purchased the 2448 masters from hdtracks.com. I really like this website apart from the $18 cost. Kind of high there, guys. You also need a software capable of capturing a stream out of Spotify. I used Audio Hijack for this video, but you can also play audio out digitally out of one machine with Spotify and capture it with a DAW on another machine. You also need software capable of measuring a track's integrated LUFS. Personally, I use RX11. And first what we're going to do is test each of the wave masters and input their integrated LUFS into a spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull in each one of these just to show you the process. We're going to open up the wave masters I purchased, and I'm going to take each one of these integrated loudnesses here, -6.9 for Taste, -7.4 for Please Please Please, Good Graces -8.2, 8.8 for Sharpest Tool, and so on and so forth for the album. And we're going to populate them into a spreadsheet. And as you can see here, I have all of the stereo integrated LUFSs for each song, and a little chart here for us to visualize those. And with this basic, very basic set of values, I can pretty accurately understand and predict what the volumes of the songs are going to be on Spotify. Typically, Spotify is going to take the loudest song in terms of integrated LUFS. In this case, as you can see, it's Taste, and it's going to take this value -6.9 and it's going to set it to their standard, which is -14 LUFS. That is a -7.1 dB difference. And that 7.1 dB difference is applied to the whole album as well. And what we could do here, I'll show you the streaming values. So -6.9 -7.1 is -14. As you can see, although the volume is decreased on every song. This is the original volume, this is the streaming volume. Although the volume changed, the relationships between the songs did not change. For albums, Spotify maintains the relationships between the songs so that the album flows level-wise as the artist and the production team intended. Thankfully, they don't set every song to -14 during album playback, because that would throw off the flow of the album terribly. The soft acoustic songs would end up feeling way louder, leaving the full production songs feeling very soft and like they're without energy. And just to be certain that this holds true, this -7.1 on this album, we can test this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up RX11, and right here I have the album that I captured off of Audio Hijack for testing purposes only, everyone. I'm just doing this purely for research. I'm not distributing this audio. So what we could do is we could test marker to marker. So song number 1, I'm going to pull this over so we can see. We have -14 for song number 1, as expected, this being the loudest song. Song number 2, we have -14.5, -14.5, so that's 7.1 dB quieter than the original. We have -15.3 here, -15.3, that's as expected. -15.9, -15.9, and I've tested all these, and you can take my word for it or test it yourself, but this Spotify stream seems to be acting accordingly. At this point, I'd like to address something pretty important. On this album, you can see the LUFS distribution is pretty tightly packed. All of the songs are within a 3.2 dB window, which is pretty great considering the different production styles, dynamics, different mastering engineers, all the different ways this album came together. A 3.2 dB window is pretty incredible. However, let's imagine a scenario that a third mastering engineer named Big Daddy Masters was part of the album and mastered this song, Don't Smile, at roughly 5.5 LUFS, as loud as possible. He just wanted to show the world his stuff and mastered this 5.5, and somehow it made the album. And some people might be like, who cares? It's the last song in the album. Why would this matter? Well, let me tell you why this would matter. If Don't Smile was increased to -5.5, it actually drops the playback volume of the LP as a whole. Actually quite a lot. So if Don't Smile gets turned up to -5.5, the song becomes the loudest song on the album. And as I mentioned, Spotify maintains the relationships between the songs. So if we turn Don't Smile and that becomes the loudest song on the album, we don't have a -7.1 drop anymore for this album. We have an 8.5 dB drop. That means the whole album is dropping 8.5 dB because of this one song. The clearest place that this would impact the playback of the album is the first song, because if instead of Taste starting at -14 LUFS, it would now drop to -15.4. That is a 1.4 dB impact. This is a great example as to why it is so important to pay attention to masters' integrated volumes when putting together an LP or an EP. One overtly aggressive master can tank the project's whole streaming volume. On the other hand, if an album's streaming volume needs to be optimized, you can look to the highest volume tracks to see if any meaningful adjustments can be made, in an artful and sounding way, of course. Like I mentioned, the Sabrina Carpenter integrated LUFS distribution is pretty much ideal. But for illustration's sake, let's see what sort of impacts we can make with a few adjustments. What if we took the 4 loudest songs and made them a bit softer? What if we set taste to -8? What if we set please, please, please to -8? What if we set espresso to -8? And we set Juno to -8? Okay, so then -8 would be the loudest song. It'd be several songs at -8, but that would be the loudest measurement on the album. And our integrated LUFS volume distribution would shrink by 1.1 dB. The loudest songs being at -8 would then be reduced to -14, which is only a 6 dB difference as opposed to the 7.1 dB difference we had before. Taste, being one of the -8 songs, would play back at the same volume, -14. Please, please, please would also play back at -14, which is an 0.5 dB improvement. Good Graces would now play back at 14.2, which is a 1.1 dB improvement, and so on. Obviously, in the real world, this would have to sound good, of course, so you would have to use your ears to see if the benefits outweigh the compromises. Sometimes, though, a little bit goes a long way. Even little improvements of 0.1 or 0.2 dB can make a meaningful impact on playback volume. As you can see here, this adjustment is actually bringing up a fair amount of the songs in terms of playback volume. Now, what happens when a playlist is created by Spotify or by a user and a song from this album is added? In most cases, and I say most cases because I have something important to show you in a second, all the songs are going to be set to -14 LUFS. Here is a few of the Sabrina Carpenter tracks, and Flume, and Lady Gaga, Chappell Roan, Billie Eilish, kind of a wide variety of songs, wide variety of styles. And what I can do is show you here, I also audio hijacked stream for testing purposes only. And as you can see, even though the waveforms look a little bit different because of the different dynamic material in the songs, the first song measures -14, second song -14. I'm going to pull this over here so you can see and I can remember which songs these are. So Friends was -14, Taste -14. Even though this looks louder, Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars is -14, and look at all those beautiful dynamics. That's nice. Here, Please, 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 -14. -14 for Chappell Roan. Espresso, -14, and the last song, Birds of a Feather, -14. So as you can see, all is as expected here. All the songs are -14 LUFS. Under normal playlisting circumstances, Spotify will normalize the single and ditch the album normalization values that we went over before. So it's just going to make all the songs -14. This will more or less, within a window, get things feeling pretty consistent. It's not a perfect system, but it's relatively okay. However, let's look at a different playlist I created. This is a little bit different. We have multiple Sabrina songs grouped together from the album. So we have tracks 1 through 3 here all together, and then later we have tracks 10 through 12. We have Espresso kind of right in the middle here, and then they're surrounded by Flume to start, Gaga. We have the same tracks that were in the previous playlist, but kind of in a different order. So let's take a look at what the Spotify playback looks like on this playlist. One might assume, since it's a playlist, that single normalization will be in effect. At least that is what my assumption was. So for Flume, we're -14 there. That's right on. Here we have Gaga at -14. That's great. Sabrina Carpenter, Taste -14. Totally as expected. -14.5 for Please, Please, Please. -15.3 for Good Graces. That's -1.3 dB from where we'd expect it in a playlist of this sort, or where I once thought it would be. Chaperone, -14. That's great. Then we have Espresso on its own, -14. So Espresso, whose LP normalization previously was -14.2, is actually -14. So that's a good sign. Pull this back up here. Then we have, after Espresso, we have Birds of a Feather, -14. Then we're back to the Sabrina tracks, 10 through 12. We have Juno at -14.2, not 2 off 14. Then we have -17.1 on Light of Girls, as well as -15.4 on Don't Smile. Let me explain what's going on here, because this is very important. What we have here is an intermixing of album normalization and single normalization. Spotify is trying to keep the relative relationships between the songs that are connected on an album, which is cool if you have a playlist of a few albums that go back to back. Let's say we were listening to Billy's album, then we're listening to Sabrina's album, then we're listening to Gaga's album. It's great because this playlist, even though the albums might feel like they're slightly different volume, at least the relationships in each of the albums will stay intact as you're playing down. However, this can be really problematic when you have an artist who makes a playlist of their album and then starts dropping in singles from other projects for comparison. In that case, we would not be comparing apples to apples because the album would be playing back with album normalization with songs under -14, and then the singles that they're pulling in from other projects would be benefiting from the louder -14 LUFS playback. I show you this so you can keep it in mind when dealing with normalization. It is important to note that album normalization numbers do come into play sometimes when dealing with playlists. It's good to keep an eye out for them and to keep tight LUFS distributions if volume on Spotify is a serious consideration. Also be cautious of what your final album normalized streaming figures will be, especially for the first song of a project. As we mentioned, in example A, if we had some crazy mastering engineer making one song on the album much louder than the rest, it actually drops the first song almost a dB and a half. And with that, that's all the information I have for you today. And hope it was helpful. Please comment if you have any questions. Thank you very much.